Welcome to Lead Pods, the official leadership podcast from USMB for pastors and church leaders, where our goal is to increase our impact together.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the USMB Lead Pods. My name is Matt Erzman, and very grateful to be your host for another episode. Today, we're diving into a really great topic, a really important topic. This is one that a friend of mine actually recommended. She said that we should take some time to talk about singles in the church. And I think that's a great idea. It's a topic that often gets overlooked or forgotten in church world. And so I'm glad we're diving into that today. I think I mentioned on a previous episode that I used to work at Focus on the Family in Colorado Springs. And so today we're talking to a friend that I got to know when I was there. Today we're talking to Lisa Anderson, and she is Focus on the Family's Director of Young Adults, as well as the host of the Boundless Show. So she leads the Boundless ministry there, and the Boundless Show is their podcast. So this is episode 21 of our show, and Boundless has almost 700 episodes of their podcast. Lisa does a great job leading that podcast and that ministry. Boundless is a ministry for singles and young adults. It's been around for a long time. They've got a great blog, lots of really great content for young adults and singles. So really looking forward to sharing this conversation with you today. One quick disclaimer before we get too far. So I'm sure all of you, if you're like me this year, you are spending a lot of time on Zoom. I have had, probably 100 Zoom calls this year, which is probably 100 more than last year. And I had a first. This is my first Zoom hiccup. So Lisa and I recorded this interview over Zoom. And for the first time, when I finished recording, the Zoom recording got lost in the cloud, outer space, however that works. The file just got lost. I looked for it for a long time. I contacted their support. They assured me they had their best engineers on it. They looked for weeks, and they said they're baffled. They're not sure what happened. Somehow, my interview with Lisa just got lost. So I was very bummed because it was a really great conversation, but luckily I recorded kind of a backup on my end, and so we still have the conversation. But the quality is just not quite as good as it usually is. So I apologize for a little bit of a dip in quality. There might be a little bit more background noise than typical, but I think you'll still be able to hear everything. But just wanted to give you a disclaimer about that here at the beginning. And before we take a quick break from our sponsor, we dive right in when I talk to Lisa talking about the Boundless Show. So that's what we're talking about here at the beginning is their podcast. So let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsor, and then we'll get right to a really great conversation with my friend Lisa about singles in the church.
Tabor College is a proud sponsor of USMB Lead Podcasts. Starting this summer, Tabor is launching a Master of Education program in neuroscience and trauma. The degree is designed to help leaders such as teachers and youth workers to understand the trauma of the children and students that they are working with. The best part about the program is that it is being offered 100% online. For more information, go to tabor.edu/adult/med.
And I started out with the podcast that you mentioned, and no joke, people talk about the stress of job interviews. Getting the podcast gig was the guys running Boundless at the time said, Lisa, we're thinking of starting this podcast. You're single and like to talk. Do you want to host it? And I'm like, yeah, I'll give it a whirl. And that was over 10 years ago. So
crazy.
Other than that, I like to travel a lot. I love to read. I love to talk about faith with friends. I'm really involved in my church, and so it's a great place to be.
Awesome. And Boundless does a lot of blogs and just a lot of really great content for young adults and singles specifically. And you guys were podcasting long before everyone was podcasting, so you're one of the OGs of podcasting.
Oh my goodness, Matt, no joke. I feel like Boundless, and this is where I cannot take credit for this. The team that started Boundless was on the cutting edge of being on a site. They actually called it a webzine when they started it. That's how old the site is, okay? So 90s. They were on the front end of blogging back in 2004, started our group blog, and then the show started January of 2008. And so we're just trying to provide a great space for single young adults, married or single, really, but most are single in this stage of life, to talk about faith, life, relationships, kind of move into adulthood with maturity and do it with a sense of community.
Yeah. That's awesome. So yeah, if you're listening and if you're a young adult, single or married, yeah, check out boundless.org. Lots of really great content on there. So Lisa, to kind of kick things off here, a couple weeks ago, on this podcast, we talked about millennials and Gen Z and just kind of how the millennial differences and how that affects the church. So from your perspective, you live this day in and day out. What are some things that you're seeing about young adults in the church, maybe specifically 20s and 30s or kind of the young adult generation? What are some things you're seeing that excite you? What are some things that worry you? What's kind of just the state of things from your perspective?
Well, it is. I mean, I think it's a very varied, Matt, in the sense of there are some interesting hallmarks of millennials, and actually Gen Z, that generation coming up behind them, is quite different from millennials. So
right.
They kind of have very distinctive characteristics. It's funny because I always think of myself, weirdly as this young adult because I work with young adults, and I've had to finally acknowledge oh yeah, Lisa, no, you're not, you are no longer a young adult, because I actually had an intern this summer who was born in the year 2000, which wasn't that yesterday?
Yeah, right.
So yeah. So that's frightening.
Well, I don't know how old you are, but I'll give you one of you're a honorary millennial. I'll give you a card. So. Thank
you. Okay, yes, I'm kind of on the mid to back end of Gen X, so I feel like although I had my whole staff one time take this "How Millennial Are You" quiz, and I came out the most millennial, so I felt kind of good about that.
Nice.
But anyway, so what we're seeing, let's talk relationships, for example. If you look at millennials. Millennials actually have a very high view of marriage. In fact, their view of marriage mirrors that of their grandparents' generation. And then you skip the boomers and the Xers, who the boomers kind of started the whole marriage is just a piece of paper, doesn't matter, we just want self-fulfillment kind of stuff. Millennials love marriage. The problem with millennials and now Xers is that they don't think they can get there, and they don't think that they can succeed at it. And so that's why you see rates of cohabitation so high. It's kind of like we're going to clearly practice at this before we make such a big commitment. So that's one great example. Highest rates of personal and student loan debt in history. So if you know any kind of young adult who obviously thinks that they're going to be either a YouTube star or some kind of amazing entrepreneur.
Podcast host.
By the time they're 25, that's in their head, that's their dream. But the reality is they are shouldering immense debt. They are largely underemployed, especially now after this year. I mean, we just, poor millennials and Gen Zers, had to shoulder a terrible economy. They have shouldered now a pandemic. They're walking through a lot of rough stuff. And so, but they try to remain hopeful, and they're trying to do what's right in front of them. As a result, and also with the digital revolution and what's going on with social media, they're incredibly burnt out. They don't know how to do one thing at one time, and they don't know how to say no. And so we're seeing a lot of millennials and Zers working at 10, 11 at night. They don't have work-life boundaries. They are burning out, at really high rates of anxiety and depression sky high. And so I think the church has a huge opportunity here to love, to enfold, to speak into the lives and mentor both of these generations because they're willing, they're teachable, they're humble, and they're hungry.
Yeah. And again, every generation comes with its own set of pros and cons, right? We talked about this on the last podcast, but you hear all the jokes about millennials, right? Where we get all the jokes about being entitled or living in our parents' basement or whatever. But there's also a lot of, positive, encouraging things about the upcoming generations. And so, yeah, there's good and bad things that are here and that are coming. So I'm with you on that. All right, so let's shift gears here just a little bit to the singles thing. So again, if you don't know Lisa, you are single, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think you would love to be married. You're kind of pursuing that. So tell us just about your experience with the church, and just to kind of get things started, how has the church been helpful, and maybe how has the church maybe not been so helpful in your journey?
Yeah, so kind of to piggyback on that, Matt, I am single, never married, never expected to be single this long. I'm now in my 40s. And it's funny because to your point, I never felt like I had the gift of singleness. I always thought, hey, I'm a pretty fun, marriable person. But it's weird, all of a sudden you realize that it's not, you can't just decide that you're going to be married and then you just lock eyes across the Starbucks with someone and pick someone. There's much more to it than that.
Right.
So it's been weird, and it's I always say, if I break it down into decades, I look at my 20s and I say, okay, my 20s, I was trying to find my footing in my career. I moved all over the country. I took a number of jobs. I became quite successful career-wise as a journalist and beyond. And then I got into my 30s. And my 20s, marriage was very much a plan C for me. It was like, I thought, my goodness, I'm just going to wake up one day, find someone amazing who is incredibly godly and hot and financially secure, and this is going to be super easy.
Right.
Then I got into my 30s, and that hadn't happened, and I had a little panic attack. And so then it became, I need to make up for lost time. So thus began the world of online dating, dating some losers, dating guys who, hey, I'm a Christian, because I was born in Texas, or whatever, a lot of weirdness, and really struggling with, is my time running out? Why am I still single? Questioning God and whatever. And now crossing into 40, I feel much more settled in the sense of God is good. I am single. If God wanted me married, he could have gotten me married at any age, stage, whatever. I feel very settled and okay with my singleness now. Still totally open to marriage, but have really found my place in seeing God's goodness and God's purpose in my life as a single person. And I would say, but again, church-wise, Matt, no joke. I love telling this story. I was new to a town once, was visiting churches, walked into a church, went to their welcome center. A precious woman came up and greeted me, and I said, hey, I'm new here, wanted to try out one of your Sunday school classes, and she kind of got some recon on who I was, late 20s, single. And she said, okay, well, we have got a Sunday school class for single people and those with special needs and disabilities, and Mike here, he'll take you there, so you know what room it's in.
Oh my gosh.
And man, dude, I went, because I'm like, I gotta see this, and I am not kidding, that is exactly what it was, and I told myself that day that if I ever wrote a book, that story was going to go in there.
Wow.
It was just kind of like let's put you in the catch-all of people that we don't really know what to do with. And,
right.
And so anyway, it was tricky. And I would say, and here I am, I'm not, speaking negatively of marriage. Goodness gracious, I work for Focus on the Family,
right.
One of the largest marriage and family ministries in the world. So marriage is a good thing. Hebrews 13:4, marriage is to be honored by all, and that includes single people. And it's God's plan for most people. 84% of people are going to be married at some point in their life. I think it's a good thing, but it is not. It has become wrongly the focus of church programs, teaching and ministry, rather than discipleship, rather than the glory of God himself and the relationship between Jesus Christ and his bride, the church. Yeah. And so that's kind of where I start getting my fingers in the pot when I'm working with my own church leadership and others to say, hey, let's do this differently, and start talking through some of this and what the church looks like.
Yeah. And that's one thing I wanted to ask you about is just the labeling that we all kind of default to. We all try to kind of categorize people, but also just everything in life, right? We're just trying to make sense of the world around us. And so that it's natural to try to categorize things. And so it's natural to try to put people into groups, but obviously I'm guessing you don't want your number one defining characteristic to be that you're single, right? But that's probably what a lot of churches, they put you in that box, right? And they're I want to be hopeful enough to assume that they have good intentions, right? They're not trying to, hello, oh, you're alone? Let me put you in this room. Like they're trying to put you with people who you can get to know in the similar life experience. So they're coming from a good place, but they're just doing it the wrong way. Yeah. So again, I think they have the right intentions. So what's the better way to do that for the church leaders who are listening?
Yeah, and I often talk about this when I talk about singles groups, because I'm often asked, what's your opinion on singles groups? And I kind of have a love-hate relationship with them because, to your point, I absolutely see how people need their tribe. Okay, like attracts like. If I'm single, a young adult, whomever, moving to a new town, I've got to find my group of friends. And if I'm a Christian, I want to find that in a church. And these are going to be the people that are my posse, my group. They're my rides to the airport. They're my chicken soup when I'm sick. They're my hanging out on a Friday night. That's all well and good. But we cannot only be stuck within our own tribe. That is not the church. That is not the body. And so So I think it's, we kind of have to work at both ends of this equation and say, yeah, you can't just say, okay, you're single, so let's put you over here, or you're married. I mean, single people get labeled, but so do married people. I mean, I often have to tell marrieds, I say, hey, married folks, your marriage is not the biggest thing about you.
Yeah.
My singleness is not the biggest thing about me. So don't define me by my relationship status here on earth. It's weirdly, I don't know if this is weirdly a hopeful thing for singles or what, but I often encourage us by saying, you know what, you guys, death is the great leveler. There is not marriage in heaven.
Yeah.
So, you know what? It's a picture of Christ and his church here on earth. It's a great sanctifying mechanism, but so is singleness. God's got all of our stories good, but we're not going to need this earthly marriage in heaven.
Yeah.
And so wait it out. God's got plans for you. And I wish we could have that conversation in the church, because it would be a very affirming and encouraging one for everyone.
So what would your advice be for a church leader who's listening? Let's say a visitor comes to their church who is a single person, whatever age range, doesn't really matter. If they want to try to help that person get plugged in, what would be a good step? Is just a small group of like a mixed singles and marrieds, or a Sunday school class, or is it some kind of activity, or what do you think would be a really good first step for the churches to offer a single person?
Yeah. I mean, I think it really is looking at them holistically and getting to know them as a person rather than just a profile. So, for example, welcome them in, find some stuff out about them. Don't just make it about like, oh, you're single, so let me just find this class for you.
Yeah.
Figure out a little bit of their story. How are they coming to your church? And then ask them, like straight up say, what kind of class are you looking for? Are you looking for something topic based? Are you looking to connect with actually other? Because some singles walking into a church are like, oh my goodness, I have so many people in my community, or I'm so connected already, I can't. Maybe that's just not what they're looking for.
Sure.
But maybe it is. They're going to straight up tell you, oh, I would love something cross-generational, or they're going to tell you, I would love, do you have a singles group or a small group for my age and stage, and leave the choice up to them. But one thing that I think is so great, especially, and you may have to, for the purpose of a Sunday school community or some kind of small group, you may have to send them off somewhere. But the best thing that you can do is immediately, single them out, no pun intended, but as a person who is a unique person, joining in the worship and the community of your church for that Sunday. So whoever it is, and I don't know if this is an official role in your church or what, but you enfold them and you get them to their class, and then someone gets them into the service and sits with them and talks to them and introduces them to other people, and then someone invites them out to lunch or to their home for lunch. I mean, you do that and have that continuum of care. Someone follows up with them that week, so they're not just a statistic or a project or someone who's darkened the doors. You will show that you care about that person as a person, and I think that person is going to return to the church.
Yeah. And again, I'm just thinking from my own perspective. So I'm in a life group at my church with, 5 or 6 couples, and we sometimes have other people join or visit or whatever, and they're all married with kids, except for one family that doesn't have kids yet. But so again, with good intentions, if you're a single person and someone invites you to a group where everyone else is married, are you really aware of that? And is that kind of weirdly hurtful or whatever? Are you just grateful they invited you? Or if you are kind of singled out in a situation, how does that make you feel? Or what are some ways we can maybe make that a little bit easier?
No, if any married person invited me to their small group or to their home, I would be super grateful. And I would be aware that I was the only single person.
Yeah.
But now, it makes a difference. Am I the only single person in your entire church, or am I just the only single person in that particular group?
Right.
Because if it's that group, these people are going to get to know me, and eventually I'll branch out and I'll find other people who are like age and stage. So no big deal there. That personal touch and that willingness to welcome me into their sphere is absolutely huge.
Okay.
And I think, Matt, I want to make the point too, for any single people listening, and for you to encourage the single people in your churches, this is not a one-way street. This is not like, let's all, say, poor single people, we have to enable their behaviors and be all sad for them and whatever.
Yeah.
Single people, as a fellow single, get your act together and plug into a church and commit to it and reach out and invite people into your sphere as well.
Yeah.
Don't just mope around saying, no one invites me. Because you know what? That young couple with the 3 young kids, they just ran out of diapers and their kids are screaming and they're hungry and they're barely keeping their minds together to get everyone in the minivan after the service.
Yes.
You may not be at top of mind right now, okay?
Right.
So recognize everyone's unique situation and be okay with that. That's why I often tell singles, like, where are those empty nesters in your church? Because you know they've got something awesome going on after church.
Yeah.
Befriend them.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're in the same stage as you, quite frankly. They don't have kids. They've got some free time. You know, you could probably go out to lunch with them or whatever.
Yep.
So there are lots of ways for all of us to reach out and befriend someone who might not be quite within our sphere.
Yeah, no, that's good. So kind of along that same road. I mean, again, singles are people, right? They're not this weird different species. They're people. And if a single person comes to a church, they're probably looking for community and they're probably looking to deepen their relationship with God, probably, right? So you said you have kind of a mixed feelings about singles group. What are kind of the main things that the church can offer that would benefit singles?
Yeah, sure. And kind of as a preface to that, I want to say that one of the biggest misperceptions about singles is that we are in some way immature or broken or incomplete.
Yep.
And so dispelling those myths is so important because, for example, at Boundless, we had a couple summers running of doing a summer event. We attracted people from all over the world who came and they're like, finally something for people like me who love Jesus and, want to serve and want to really rock out singleness while I'm in it.
Yeah.
And Matt, there were people there. I mean, there were people there who were strugglers and who were trying to get their life together and whatever. But there were also like corporate executives. There were like 2 anesthesiologists. There were, these are people who were doing life, loving God, and plugging in. And
sure.
So, from the church perspective, I would say a couple things. One would be make a variety of activities or opportunities available for people to plug in. So that could be I always say the top of the funnel is big church, the big service, pastors from the pulpit. Use single people in your illustrations. Don't make them all about your wife and your kids.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Incorporate people from other ages, other demographics, stages, that kind of stuff. That's just a great thing. When you do prayer, I remember I addressed this with one of my pastors in the past. He was always praying for the marriages and families in the church. Oh, yeah, right. And I'm like, single people are part of families, and I hate it when we act like family starts at 2 people getting married. But at the same time, acknowledge those who are single and who are living within their families, who are loving on people in their community and their own families. Yeah. Include them in corporate prayer. Yeah. Include them in the life of the church. So that single person who is a CPA, they better be on your finance committee. Right. That single person who has the means and the ability to be on missions trips, like all the time, using their vacation to serve God. Get them, they are passionate about the nations, get them involved. Help them be decision makers, help them be people who are working to serve, use their giftings in many different ways. And I think that's a great way to go about that. I think it is also valuable, Matt, for churches to program some things that are uniquely for singles, but not in a way, it has to be like singles driven or singles led. So not, can't be like creepy or weird. Like a dear friend of mine was going to a mega church in Orlando, and sometimes she would just send me, again, great intentions. Her church is just precious, but they often miss the mark in like events for singles. Right. So they were doing these Valentine's events, and there was like the couples, dinner, movie theater or whatever. And then there was this thing for singles, and it was like in the bulletin, come date Jesus. Oh. And I'm like, okay, no one wants to date Jesus.
Right,
Matt, okay?
right.
So they were invited to come date Jesus, but then if they were a single parent, they also had to pick their kids up by 8. So it was
oh my gosh.
It was just very dismissive and just kind of off the mark. And so always include those single people, the ones who aren't going to be bitter and angry and weird about it. There are a lot of us out there who want to help your church succeed in this. Get them on the planning committees, and then do the cross-generational stuff too, because that's so important to realize that we all, if we're just single people hanging out with single people, that's just so, I'm like, I don't need more of just me.
Yeah.
I want to know what those married folks are doing. I want to know what those young couples are doing with life. So let's get us all in the mix together.
Yeah. The dating Jesus thing, man. Don't you just shake your head and just not even know how to respond to things like that? There's something in your book about like your goal is to not be cheesy. You're not trying to, if you quote unquote, if you only believe, you'll find the right person, and just pray and God will bring the right person to you. I think it's also important. I want to hear your thoughts on this. Like you were just talking about, for the pastors to not feel so much pressure to tiptoe around it, but just be real about issues that we're all facing, including single people, and don't try to sugarcoat it or make it sound like if you're a perfect Christian, you're automatically going to get married. Because I think that idea does a lot of damage. And I think some single people might feel like they're not a good Christian if they're not married. So can you talk about that a little bit, about just being real and what pastors can do to try to help with that?
Yes. So the desire for marriage in single people is very real. Like over 90% of singles want to be married someday and assume that they will, especially among young adults.
Yeah.
So, to not address it is just weird. So pastors will often, they'll swing the pendulum in the opposite direction of like, I'm just not going to talk about it because I was married at 21, so I certainly don't want to tread here. I don't know what to say. Well, that is not going to be helpful.
Right.
So admit that most singles want to be married. They want to talk about marriage. And quite frankly, most single adults at their core want you to kind of meddle in that area of their lives in a helpful, loving way. So, if you get together that gaggle of single ladies, that want to talk about dating and whatever, you're going to hear about 8 hours worth of content from them about why aren't the guys asking me out? And why are these guys also passive and whatever? And then guys will say stuff about women too.
Yes.
So, start the conversations and be honest about them and be okay with, I was at a women's event one time and I sat next to a woman and she's like, are you married? Do you have kids? And I'm like, no, single, no kids. And she's like, honey, you stay encouraged, because I was 25 before I got married.
Oh gosh.
And I'm like, okay, that is precious. She was absolutely serious. I was well into my 30s at that point.
Right.
So people are going to say weird stuff and do weird stuff, but it is okay, pastors, to acknowledge that, to say, but acknowledge the desire for marriage because it's a good one, but then also don't speak as though their life is going to start if and when they get married.
Yeah.
So don't speak of it as an end goal that they need to get to, because then they'll be able to start serving, or then they'll be effective, or then they'll be complete, or I think can be very destructive.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to kind of turn the corner a little bit. So far we've talked a lot to church leaders. Now I want to talk to the single people listening a little bit. The perception, and I think there's data to back that up, that there are just fewer young adults in churches right now. And I know, talking from some of my single friends and just reading some things, like churches where people used to meet girlfriends, boyfriends, spouses, right? That was a dominant place where people would go to meet someone who had similar goals in life, similar faith background, obviously. And I mean, I'll be honest, in my church, it's just true that there aren't very many single young adults in our church. So tell us about that. Like, what has your journey been? And is it true that there are fewer? And how does that affect how you date if their singles aren't in the churches?
Yeah, it is true. Statistically speaking, there are many more single women in churches than single men, basically. So that's just a numbers game, and that's just the truth. And so I always say, in fact, when I do interviews on this topic and I mention like online dating as an okay thing, sometimes I'll get gasps like from pastors, like, oh my goodness, is that trusting God? Is that like, is this an okay tool?
Right.
If you go online to date, are you going to get sucked into pornography?
Right.
It's, I'm like, I think people can get sucked into pornography at any stage at this point. So,
right.
So I say, use all the tools that are out there for you. In fact, I think a pastor would do very well to encourage, for example, if you're in a smaller church in your community or a church that maybe doesn't have a lot of single adults, you be the catalyst to start something citywide. Because again, singles listening, you can plug in. So many singles lament, like, I love my church. I want to give to this church. I'm serving at this church. This is the church I've been at for 8 years now. I don't want to leave. But they feel like they have to leave because there aren't other single people or there aren't potential quote unquote marriage matches. No, I think any pastor who is like legit and loving is going to be like, let's find a way to do some cross-church stuff for that kind of community, for that kind of fellowship. And you can still be a member of your church and go there for your teaching and connection and worship and accountability. That's all good. So singles, don't feel like you have to fly the coop or go constantly church hopping or looking for that. That said, go online if you want to. But one caution I have with that is don't use online dating as this crutch for, I don't want to look at the people in my sphere because they're, they don't meet all my top 50 criteria. But if I talk to this guy in Boca Raton, Florida, he's going to be the one.
Right.
So examine that, make sure you're doing even online dating in community, and then be open, share your desire for marriage to everyone you know. It is an okay thing, it is a godly thing, it is a biblical thing. I think we've done ourselves such a disservice in saying like, oh, don't meddle in my love life, or don't be, we're so ashamed of it. And I'm like, you know what? A few generations ago, that's exactly how it worked. The people who loved you most set you up. And they helped you find, who better to help you find a great match than the people who know and love you best? And so you say, I want to be married. You say, what that looks like. You get people on your team. You have them praying for you. You have them keeping their eyes open for you. As long as they're legit, wise, discerning people. Okay. I jokingly say my mom, who's now with Jesus, I eventually had to kick her off my team because I let her stay on as a prayer warrior because she's a prayer warrior, but her discernment had just tanked. So she started finding these guys for me that just ambled into her church. And one of them she tried to set me up with, she'd only seen the back of his head, didn't even know anything about him. So I'm like, come on, Mom, that's not okay.
Right.
But people that really want to help and want to be part of that, be open to it because that is where, many great matches are going to be found and established. And of course, within the church is a great place to start with that. So be okay with making those desires known.
That's good. One thing I really want to make sure we have time for is for you to talk about identity issues. I think for a lot of, we've talked about this a little bit already, but for a lot of people, that is how they see themselves. They see themselves as, oh, I'm single. That means I wasn't good enough for someone to pick me. Again, and it makes sense. The culture says that kind of thing to them on a regular basis. So that's one thing I really admire about you. You're open about your story and you're open that you would love to still get married, but at least from as much as I know you, you don't let that drag you down, and you're not a downer to be around. You're still hopeful and encouraging. So how have you kind of gone through that journey specifically? And do you have any advice for people listening who maybe feel in a similar situation?
Yeah. So Matt, I am amazing, and I'll put my own ad out there.
Yes. No, all single people, hit me up. I'll give you Alyssa's email.
Oh, sorry. Maybe that'll be a side podcast. All the single ladies.
Yes.
We'll just talk about how amazing we are.
I like it.
Okay. But no, identity is so huge. This is a big deal. And this is until we, male, female, single, quite frankly, married, anyone, get this straight, all we're going to do is be looking at our lives and the things that we have done, the things that have been done to us, the things that have, imploded in our own lives, and we're going to define ourselves by those. When in reality, until we understand who God is and who we are, everything that I would have to say, or anything that any book would have to say, any podcast, even any pastor, is all going to be tips and tactics until we run it through the filter of God's word. And so, I that's why at Boundless, people think, oh yeah, you guys are going to talk about dating and relationships, you're going to talk about finances, and we do. But at its core, my priority for Boundless is to get young adults into the Word of God, to have him transform their lives.
Yeah.
Because until you are transformed into maturity and the Holy Spirit is alive within you, you do not have what it takes to soldier through this world. I mean, there is just no way. And so, so my encouragement for folks in that, and look, Matt, I get it. You know, in the dating realm, I was just trying to run through this in my head. Definitely the majority of my relationships, I've been the one dumped. I have dated guys who I was the last person they dated before the person they married.
Oh, yeah.
I had a guy break up with me and say that dating me made him realize that he needed counseling.
Wow.
I kind of took that as a compliment because I was kind of like, oh, maybe, you know, I just unearthed stuff and he realized he's not in a healthy place.
Yeah.
I have been dumped twice on Christmas Eve.
Oh my gosh.
So it's like, I've been there. So singles, I hear you, I feel you, I know what this is like. And it can be devastating to feel like I am not enough. I am not worthy. What is wrong with me? What do I have to do to fix myself? And I've tried it all. And so what I know today is that I am single. What I know today is that I have been given by God today only to be single today. I may be single tomorrow. I may be single the rest of my life, but I only have today to work with. And so I have to live victoriously in that. And I have to realize that, you know, God is in the business of making great matches. And if he has one for me, he can absolutely accomplish that.
Yeah.
And that's just understanding God and the bigness of God and trusting him and trusting his story in my life. And, you know, I could say, and I hear so many singles say this, oh, you know, if I just got married, so much of my life would be fixed, you know, or it'd be so much better, or I could serve so much better. I could just, but I'm like, okay, but then what do you do when you hit rough patches in your marriage?
Yeah, right.
What do you do when then you're struggling with infertility or job loss or catastrophic illness or something? We're all going to have to deal with hardship.
Yep.
Many of us, multiple hardships at one time. Singleness may be one right now, but fortunately, God is both sovereign and good, and we can truly, truly trust him with our stories.
Yeah, that's great. And one of the first things you said, I wrote down a note, is just you're in a season of life where you're content. Like, again, maybe you wish things were maybe a little bit different, but you're content where you are. And I think, again, whether you're single, married, whatever, I'm married and I have kids, but that doesn't mean that my life is easy, right? And so finding ways to be content in my life is also hard, right? And so I think all of us, no matter what stage we're in, having that perspective is just so important and often gets missed, just to keep that perspective in mind. So I'm glad that you found that, and I hope all of us can continue on that journey of just being content where God has us right now.
Yeah. I mean, whatever stage you're in, you're going to have unique blessings and unique challenges.
Yep.
I'm sure you would look back, Matt, on your singleness and be like, there was some pretty rocking stuff back there.
Yeah, right. It's true.
You know, I kind of liked doing whatever I wanted when I wanted, or I liked having the freedom to hang out with my buds and do, you know, there's a lot of good in singleness, and but there's a lot of challenge, and likewise with marriage, and God gives us seasons, you know, to grow through and to learn from, and we just walk them out as he gives them to us. So it's a good perspective to have.
Definitely. Okay, we're running out of time, but I did want to hit one more thing. You and I were chatting before we started recording about another kind of misconception about singleness in the church. And I think you just talked about this on the Boundless Show. I listened to one recently. I think you talked about this. But a lot of pastors or church leaders, if they come across someone single, especially if they're maybe 30s or 40s or whatever, they might start to have questions or start doubting or whatever their sexuality. And then it start making assumptions that maybe there's a reason why they're still single. And again, I think that's something that can be very damaging. Do you want to tell us just about your experience with that? And again, any advice that you'd have for church leaders?
Yeah, I feel like myself, I feel like other singles I've talked to, like you said, kind of those ones who cross that 30 threshold, have dealt with this. And then we actually answered this very question on the Boundless Show just recently. And it really is kind of that awkward. I mean, first of all, we have seen with the rise of, you know, in the news and beyond of LGBT issues, and a lot more people struggling with same-sex attraction and even being willing to talk about that has kind of brought this to the forefront. But I think where we do ourselves a disservice is in transferring that to, okay, does singleness mean that this is your struggle, or does it mean that, I have to kind of wonder or question your faith, or, and I think that can be very damaging to single adults.
Yeah.
And so, it's the question we answered on the show was from a woman who said, she and her best friend go to church together, but when they stand awkwardly in the narthex, it's kind of like people give them the side eye, like,
right.
Why are you two together? And what, you see this especially if people are roommates,
Right.
So what's funny is I lived alone recently for 13 years, and now I have a roommate. And it's so funny because my whole thing with being a roommate, other than I am very selfish and I want things done my way, and so I've had to work through that whole thing. I'm like, married people, bless you, because now I understand that.
Yeah.
So that's a great learning curve. But I'm like, oh my goodness, okay, having a roommate is super efficient. It is a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
It is actually doing life together in a way that the gospel calls us to do that, and
Sure.
to be accountable to someone else. So there are good things to that. And so I think we need to be very proactive in bucking the lies of Satan that he wants to entrap us in, even to the point of a lot of single people remaining single and then starting to be like, well, I don't know, I'm single, so does that mean I'm gay? Does that mean, should I explore this in my life? Right. And we need to turn that script on its head and be like, no, this is total. I mean, again, unless we have to question Jesus, right. I don't know.
Right.
What are we going to do with that? So he certainly thrived as a single man.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's an important reminder for us just to not, because again, I think people have good intentions, but they just accidentally say hurtful things a lot. And so I think it's just a good reminder that we all need to watch our words. It's a good thing for all of us to remember. So, all right, Lisa, we're running out of time here, but thank you so much for your time today. I want to encourage people, especially single people, check out Lisa's book, The Dating Manifesto. Check out Boundless, The Boundless Show, all their blogs. They do a lot of great things. And Lisa, you do a great job leading that ministry. So before we wrap, anything else that you want to close with today? Anything we didn't hit you want to talk about?
Just to thank you and everyone listening and all the leaders in the churches that are listening right here, because you guys are boots on the ground. What we do at Boundless is we're kind of sitting out there broadcasting to whoever will hear, but you are doing street-on-street ministry with people whose lives are affected every day in the big and small things. I'm tearing up even as I say it. And so thank you, pastors and leaders. We love you. And thank you for having an eye on the single people that you minister to. It matters so much.
Absolutely. Well, and hey, we feel the same way about you and all the ministry that you're doing. So thanks for your time today. Before we started recording, you and I were saying this could easily be a very, very long conversation. So maybe we'll have a part 2 someday. We can talk some more. I think we'd love to hear more from you.
I didn't even get into my awesome dating stories, Matt. We got to do a separate show on that. Oh. The barrel of monkeys.
Oh, wow. I would love just the little droplets that you've given today. I'm sure you've got some stories. So.
Oh, they're awesome.
Awesome. All right. Well, hey, thanks, Lisa. Thanks again for your time today.
Thanks again.
What would it feel like for you to be living at your full potential? What if you were regularly connecting with someone who accepts you unconditionally, believes in and affirms your potential, actively listens to you, and keeps you accountable to help you reach your goals? A life coach will get you there. Coaching is an intentional one-on-one relationship that empowers people to realize their full potential in personal living and vocational accomplishment. Lead coaching is facilitated by trained MB coaches who serve as a life-on-life coach and is available to pastors, leaders, and anyone. To learn more, visit www.usmb.org/lead coaching or call Ed Boschman at 661-549-6021.
All right, there you have it. That wraps up the final episode of 2020. My thanks to Lisa. She is just a lot of fun. I always really enjoy any chance I have to talk with her. I just appreciate her spirit, her fun, kind of spunky personality. I just love that conversation. And again, if you are single or young adult, or if you have people in your church or your family or whatever that are in that stage, please do direct them to boundless.org. There's a lot of really great content there that I think they will really enjoy, and just lots of really good reminders for pastors and church leaders. So, and a quick plug for Lisa too. Please do check out her book, The Dating Manifesto. I'm sure it's available wherever you get your books. Follow her on all the socials. Follow Boundless on Facebook and Instagram, and stay connected to the really great content they're sharing. And thanks to those of you listening today. So as I said, this is the last episode of 2020. we have our first year under our belt, so thank you for coming along with us as we've launched this thing this year, and many of you are subscribing and listening. We're very grateful for the feedback you're providing, and we're looking forward to another year coming up here soon, so please continue to listen and help us spread the word. We are going to take a quick break for January, so quick personal update. So my wife and I are expecting our second baby. Our second daughter will be here literally any minute. I'm recording this on her due date, so we will be having our second daughter here shortly. And so with that, with the holiday season, we're going to take a couple weeks off. So we're actually going to be off for all of January, but we'll be back in February with some new episodes. And I am already looking forward to talking with you when we get back. So in the meantime, I hope you have a really great Christmas season. Please take a break, especially just with everything that's happened this year. Church leaders deserve some downtime, so enjoy that time with your friends and family. I hope you all are staying healthy and doing well, and thank you again for listening today and for listening all year. Have a great holiday season, and we will see you in February of 2021.
Thanks for listening to Lead Pods. Make sure you don't miss an episode by subscribing to our show wherever you're listening today. Learn more by visiting usmb.org, and be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'll see you next time as we learn more practical tools to increase our impact together.